Hello, this is Chris Kallal, Territory Agronomist for DEKALB Asgrow here in West Central Illinois. Today I just want to take a few minutes to give a quick disease update and then talk through some fungicide recommendations on some of our DEKALB hybrids. I'll just talk briefly on the disease triangle, then we'll jump into a discussion around gray leaf and southern rust, and then we'll look at some hybrid recommendations. Then we'll circle back and talk more about tar spot and crown rot, and then wrap it all up. So just to review the disease triangle real quick. The host plant, right? You have corn or soybeans planted, and is that the host plant for that particular pathogen? Do we have the pathogen present? Does it overwinter in the field, or does it blow in? And then what's the environment like? Do we have a conducive environment for the disease to develop? And then over time, that disease can develop if all three of those things are in place. Gray leaf spot is favored by warm temperatures and high relative humidity. It does overwinter here, and so since it does overwinter here, it generally starts in the lower canopy and moves up through the plant. Southern rust is also favored by high humidity and not quite as warm of temperatures as gray leaf. It does not overwinter here. It blows in from the south on storms, and one thing I like to tell people is take note of earworms in sweet corn. Because if you start to see some earworm in some of the first sweet corn you eat, that earworm and that southern rust likely brew up on the same storm from the south, and so it's a good chance if you've got earworm in your sweet corn, we're going to have southern rust in our cornfields. Since it does blow in from the north, it generally starts in the upper portion of the canopy and then moves down. So this picture is a snippet of the file that we normally put together every year to make recommendations for hybrids on their response to fungicide. So let's look at 6435 on the bottom. We've got an offensive rating and a defensive rating for every hybrid. 6435 is rated low on a defensive rating because agronomically it is a very strong hybrid. It's very good on southern rust, gray leaf, anthracnose stalk rot, and its harvest appearance is one of the best in the lineup. So we give it a low on a defensive rating because of those great agronomic scores. But on the flip side, from an offensive standpoint, some of our internal data and some of our in-field experiences have suggested that 6435 can give us tremendous yield bumps because of a fungicide application. So we give it a high rating on our offensive response. Hybrids that are rated high for defensive are generally because they're some of the weaker in the lineup on, say, maybe gray leaf or southern rust or anthracnose stalk rot, or maybe their harvest appearance could use a little help. And you'll notice that I did call out this year in the file where some of those lower ratings, we colored those cells in pink. We will be sending this file along with the video to you. So at this point, you're probably saying, hey, what about tar spot? That's what I'm worried about. You didn't give me any recommendations on tar spot. So this one's a little tricky. So let's just run through a couple things real quick. So first off, nobody has an inoculant to be able to screen for this in their pathology groups. So no university, no seed company has any type of inoculant. And normally we inoculate for other diseases to be able to screen our hybrids. Historically, ratings have been difficult because they're mainly opportunistic. Another issue we found is that not everybody agrees on what the rating should be for a certain hybrid's tolerance to tar spot. In Latin America, which is where the disease originated, it is favored by cooler temperatures and high relative humidity, but it does seem that in the U.S. it can develop under some warmer temperatures. The disease incidence does definitely increase when there's at least 7 hours of free moisture on the leaves from rain, fog, or high relative humidity. And if you think back to 2021, that's kind of what our environment was. There's a lot of people that say that if you have the disease at any level, you should be making a fungicide application, kind of a no questions asked type deal. From a timing perspective, we would suggest that the VT-R1 application is the preferred timing, just like we would normally be doing in a corn fungicide application, and then if necessary, repeated R3, R4. And tar spot does overwinter here now, so it's kind of like gray leaf. There'll be some years we could have it bad, there'll be some years we may not have it at all. It will all depend upon the environment. So since it overwinters, look in the lower canopy first. So I'm going to take the opportunity here to make a quick commercial for Delaro and Delaro Complete. So what we're looking at here is some ratings for some trial work that we got from the Crop Protection Network. And what they're doing here is they're making comparisons of different fungicides and their ability to control tar spot. And one of the things you'll notice here with Delaro at 8 ounces is it's got some of the lowest percent infestations on the ear leaf at every growth stage. So this is some data out of Purdue from 2021, and this is showing the percent tar spot severity at R5. And once again, you will see that DEKALB Complete, since it has one of the lowest bars, showing that it is one of the better products on the market for helping control or minimize the spread of tar spot in the corn plant. Here's another look at some data out of Wisconsin in 2021. And again, very similar, DEKALB Complete showing up very well, having some of the lowest numbers here on the tar spot area under the disease curve. So again, just kind of making a cheap plug here for DEKALB and DEKALB Complete at being some of the best products on the market at being able to keep tar spot at bay in the corn plant. Yeah, I briefly wanted to mention this Tar Spotter app that University of Wisconsin developed. Once you download this app, you can go in and drop pins on fields and name those fields. And then within each field, this app will give you a forecast of what your risk is for tar spot to develop. And just briefly from looking at it, I would say, most fields across central Illinois are going to show up as relatively kind of high, but it's a good tool to use to kind of keep track of things in the coming weeks. So I can't do a talk on disease and fungicide without mentioning crown rot. So we know the infection happens early on in a corn's life cycle when we've got wet, cool soils. The visual symptoms normally show up around blackwear or shortly after in ghosted plants. The severity of the disease is impacted by stresses that are put on the plant during grain fill. A VT-R1 fungicide application is the single best tool we have at trying to help keep crown rot at bay. Now let me be clear. It has absolutely no efficacy on crown rot itself. The fungicide does not get into the plant, go to the crown, and battle the infection to try to keep it at bay. What it does is that it reduces stress on the plant during grain fill by helping to control other diseases and helping in the efficiencies of the plant so that the crown rot doesn't get worse from those additional stresses. Okay, so let's try to bring this thing to a close. In regards to the pathogen, gray leaf and tar spot do overwinter here. So we have the inoculum for those here in central Illinois. Southern rust, that depends upon whether or not we get storms from the south and if it blows up. As I mentioned a while ago, keep an eye out on the earworm in your first sweet corn. In the environment, long periods of leaf wetness will drive disease. Okay, from a temperature perspective, gray leaf likes it a little bit warmer than southern rust, and they both like it a little bit warmer than tar spot. In regards to the host, corn is a susceptible host to all of these diseases. There is no resistance, there is no immunity. Okay, we have good ratings on gray leaf spot and southern rust, so use those as guidance on making fungicide applications. We only have anecdotal and disputed opinions on tar spot tolerances, so I would not count on getting great recommendations from anybody on which hybrids to spray and which hybrids to not spray in regards to tar spot. As far as fungicide application timing, the lead rec is still VT-R1. That is the peak of the bell curve, and it always has been, and that continues to stay the case with these new diseases. Now, in regards to rate, in a lot of cases, we always gravitate to the lower end of a rate range. For example, DEKALB has a rate range of 8 ounces to 12 ounces, and we almost always use 8 ounces. There is a benefit in extending that rate up to the 12-ounce rate to try to minimize the risk of having to make a second application. Bottom line, at this point, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. It's all about the environment, and do we have a conducive environment to the diseases developing? We do have high commodity prices, which does make it easier to achieve some nice ROIs. Something to keep in mind, we have a lot of early planted beans that we're going to want to go cut in September and early October, and that's going to delay our corn harvest and could increase the necessity of a fungicide application to help that plant stay more intact. Thanks for your time and listening. I really just kind of scratched the surface on this. There's a lot more we could have talked about. If you want to further the conversations, feel free to reach out to us. Be happy to talk. Thanks.